you can generate some sort of alert for external teams or internal divisions like marketing or sales and or IT primarily, right? They do not want somebody to come and touch their environment. So that automation definitely. But what we have seen is with the amount of phishing and ransomware attacks growing and the exposure that an organization has, there's a bit more leniency these days than 2 years back. Because just imagine a scenario where you get compromised in a ransomware and it was your IT team which was kind of blocking you to not do it. It will look really funny, right? And at the same time, you can end up on the front page of the news, which nobody wants to be for the bad reasons. So now I think we see a more, alignment with IT and cybersecurity teams to take necessarily automated action.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the episode 70th of the GB Show. Today, I'm going to bring you a topic which you all have asked me for long, that how to set up a good SIEM in your organization. What automation plays a role in SIEM or SOAR? Do AI/ML going to change the game of these two products? If I'm going to look out for MSSP, what should I be looking out for? Do I need to have my own prime SIM or should I be considering an MSSP? And if I am considering an MSSP, what should I be looking out for? What should I be looking out for a SIM and SOAR solution? What are the metrics? How to measure the effectiveness? So lot many questions which I'm going to get you the answer in today's episode with Ajay Biyani. He is VP, APJ and Middle East with Securonix, and he has around 20 plus years of experience with cybersecurity solutions. Let's hear him out. Hi Ajay, welcome to the GB Show.
Thanks, man. Great to be here. Thrilled and excited to talk about cybersecurity, which is my passion. And again, look forward to some interesting.
Sure. Looking forward to the same. And I would like to tell my audience that Ajay has come all the way from Singapore and he has a busy schedule. I just requested him that please spare some time for us because he's an amazing leader having around 20 years of experience in cybersecurity. And we need to learn something from him today. And I'm very much excited about this episode. So maybe Ajay, just to simply start with, you have seen the evolving trend in cybersecurity. You have seen how organization there was nothing called cybersecurity, and then now it's all boom around the same, right? If any organization at this point of time looking forward for what as per you are the foundational element of cybersecurity that's a prerequisite any organization should have bare minimum.
Sure, very pertinent question, and obviously being a practitioner for the last 20 years, starting from services to end customers and then to the product side of the equation. What fascinates me is the basics are still the basics, right? Like if you look at the core things, which is around people, process, and technology, you need to definitely have the right people with the right set of processes. As much as automation you should, but then you also need the right technology, and that's what we provide, right? We cover the technology side, enabling the people and the processes. But the other aspect, which is a new dimension that we have seen since COVID, is to also take care of scale, skill, and spend. Because everybody has a finite budget. Like you can't overspend than what you're given. In fact, every year they expect you to save more, right? So spend has to be controlled. It needs to be predictable. So it has to be part of your strategy in predicting the cost while you're protecting your organization, your enterprise. Skills. I mean, in general, what we have seen in enterprises, large enterprises, you have 20, 30, sometimes 40 different cybersecurity products. So how do you get so much skill? Like one person cannot learn all 40, right? And there is a limit in the talent and the supply and demand equation, right? Generally. So how do you manage that skill? That is also a very important factor when you're strategizing. And then obviously, the scale, right? After COVID, as we also chip shortage, everything is either hybrid, people are working remotely, you're using more SaaS applications because there's not enough space in data centers, not enough hardware available to, go and deploy things. So what you do is you go with SaaS. So all these cloud applications have literally made the scale, unparalleled compared to what we used to see 5 years back. So when you're strategizing, apart from people, process, and technology, you have to also factor in your scale, skill, and spend from a strategic standpoint to have a right strategy in the long term.
Amazing. And with that, Ajay, I will like you to, because you said that 5 years back you have seen something and before that. So your experience overall is, and how you have seen these things evolving, and what the future trends look like, and if the organization need to look like, how they can actually cope up with that. So maybe a bit brief of your experience, what you have seen, where all you have worked, and how you have seen that shaping up what future.
So, yeah, I think very, very good question again. And what I've seen, at least in the last 5-6 years, is we used to collaborate less before COVID, and everybody was living in their own silos. But ultimately, what COVID did is it forced us out, and we had to think more creatively to make things happen. Like I was dealing with a lot of banks and telcos who are heavily regulated, right? Not just in APJ, but across Middle East and India and all. And they were told by the regulators, you can't move out, you have to have everything on premise in your own data centers, right? Now that shift happened because of COVID, whether we like it or not. And now they have to use more cloud applications for faster go-to-market and better security. So the collaboration level before COVID and after COVID is very different. Now you see, banking, FSI coming together, even regulators coordinating and contributing to the community cause around cybersecurity. So that's a big and refreshing change in my opinion. The other thing is the cultural shift, right? Like we were always thinking that, okay, this can be done in-house. Let's air gap everything we can. Why expose it to the world? Now, if you are not really internet connected, if you're not thinking of, a perimeter that is kind of diminished, and you're talking about people working from anywhere, any way they can connect and access your application infrastructure, you will be left behind. Like look at banks. We have more and more digital banks. Like for getting a SIM card, you don't go to a shop today and buy a SIM card, right? It gets delivered to your phone right away as an eSIM. Similarly, a bank account opening and behind the scene technology, everything is essentially online. And to be online, you have to be absolutely accessible from outside to inside. That is a big shift. And that means obviously your cybersecurity posture has also evolved. Your perimeter has disappeared. We are talking about unparalleled, data points and access points, which were not there in the past. But that also meant that you could do faster to the go-to-market, and you have to also take care of the cybersecurity, which made it difficult. In all honesty, you look at the recent breaches. CISOs definitely cannot sleep in the night. As simply put, that before COVID they had control. Now there's not much control left, right? So that is a big shift again. That means you have to be on your toes all the time. Board is asking tough questions. I remember, 5 years back, I was talking to one of the CISOs, and he was literally struggling to get attention of the board. Now he doesn't need to ask for attention. Board will definitely come and ask him to explain, what are you doing about cyber? What is our exposure? How are you managing that threat surface, right? So it's very different now compared to 5 years. More collaboration, more openness to adopting SaaS, and then also board really supporting the cause around cybersecurity and allowing CISOs to go out there and try things. That's a major shift.
Fair enough. And with this, all cybersecurity boom, so what all tools you think are important for an organization, and how you think where the SIEM stands, and what is the importance of the same as well?
Well, SIEM has been here for good 20 years, right? Like log management, log aggregation, and correlation is not new. We all have been, playing with it, and whether regulatory or otherwise, we have been implementing it. The role of SIEM also has changed. Again, scale and skill has different effect, right? Previously, we were talking about, few hundred GB, maybe a terabyte worth of data being pumped on a daily basis. Now you deal with, banks and institutions who are pumping 30 to 40 terabytes a day. That means petabytes worth of data in a year that is going to be correlated, stored, processed, and analyzed. So the role of SIEM has really changed. It has to really do a scale which was unparalleled. We're talking about 1 million events per second in some of the banks that we deal with in India. So we are literally talking about some of the largest private banks in here, right? Which have everything online and all. So SIEM now has to scale to 1 million events per second. Secondly, the insider threat. I think for the longest time, about 10-15 years, it was good to have, all the data sources pump log, and you do correlation and you're good. But what we realized is the weakest link is the human, right? Today, if you reach any data breach report, whether it is Verizon's data breach investigation report or any other report that is published by IBM or independent authorities, you will see most of the time attackers gain access by proper credentials. That really means attackers are not just going to exploit vulnerabilities and get into your environment. They're going to literally use credentials to log in and then attack you. So that basically means you have to monitor the insider more than the external part. And that's where we see most of the insider threat programs. If you talk to the major banks and conglomerates and telcos, they are looking at doing more insider threat programs than we had ever seen. And that basically means your SIM has to also look at the human and entity behavior and combine it together. We call it next gen SIM, at least until last year. So SIM and UEBA combined. And then what in the last 2 years that I've been here in Securonix, what I've seen is automation also is becoming a very important aspect. So you can't just detect, you need to respond, correlate, and come up with a exact timeline view of what really happened, how far it has reached, and where it can go, and then ultimately take an automated response, either to stop the attack or basically invoke a workflow which informs the board, the regulators, as well as your internal teams to come together and watch the behavior and basically take necessary actions, right? So SIM has now no longer being a log management and log aggregation function. It has to integrate with UEBA. It has to have a UEBA option as well as the automation side, right? So we've come a long way from SIM to a unified platform. That is what we call it.
Amazing. And I think when you are talking about insider threat combining with this SIM technology, it's more from intentional or unintentional cases. Like some use cases you like to share with us that which, with this whole combination, you were able to tackle and have worked good for you.
Many examples, but my favorite is phishing, right? Like, so see, everybody tries to avoid phishing. But even if you talk to the likes of KnowBe4 who are doing these trainings across all enterprises to stop phishing, their own employees also click on some phishing links, right? This is one of the events I attended last year, and they mentioned that even 5 to 6% of KnowBe4 employees are clicking on that, right? So phishing is a use case where just imagine a scenario where an employee received an email saying, "I'm your CEO." It looks very legitimate, and the user clicks on the link to give access to some kind of form or fills in some critical information. The problem is when phishing happens, A, it has come from a typo-squatted domain name on an email address, and B, when you click on the thing, it can basically install something in your environment. A script can execute in the background. Now, this all is happening with a real workstation inside your network by a real employee or a contractor, right? Now, what we are able to do is when somebody is getting a phishing email, we're able to look at that and it is coming from a typo-squatted domain, and we can block it then and there with the integration with the email service and security providers. But just in case if it makes to the inbox, what we are able to do is as soon as the user is trying to open that email or click on that, we're able to say, here's where the attack started. Somebody got an email, they opened the email and clicked on something, and that's where it has reached at this stage. Now you can go and say, okay, Ajay Biyani, the user, clicked on a wrong email and that looks suspicious or a phishing email. Let's try and make sure that his device or his access is restricted till we investigate and basically take care of the attack if it is real, right? And that way we are able to contain the attack surface as well as take remediatory actions, right? In terms of disabling the account or blocking the device and so on and so forth before it gets into your account and leads to a ransomware attack and so on and so forth. Very basic example, but happens all the time.
Yeah, but implementing it must be challenging, right? So when we are working with the organization, what generally the challenges they face and how they can overcome the same.
See, the biggest challenge is how do you automate all this, right? Like you can't have an analyst sitting in your SOC go through alert by alert and figuring out this one is really bad, this one is okay, maybe we can ignore it and all that stuff, right? So amount of machine learning you can implement an automated response.
But before that, even implementing, like putting the old tools, because when I was working, like building SIM itself was a challenge. Having the log from all the things, and then you have this. You are putting up these automated controls where if someone is clicking on the link, the machine is going isolated and all. Then business shouts out a lot on that cases. So those kind of challenges from the implementation perspective. Then I will of course go with automation and AI/ML story. I will love to know.
As far as I am concerned, and the implementation that I have seen, which includes some of the biggest implementation on the planet today, UEBA is easy to implement. All you have to do is integrate with your existing SIM if you have something in place, and most of the enterprises do have, right? And that is like a 30-day period where you integrate your SIM with the UEBA provider like Securonix, and then it can start do the behavioral profiling and it can get going. Automation, yes, because you need to take permission before you can disable an account, or you can generate some sort of alert for external teams or internal divisions like marketing or sales and or IT primarily, right? They do not want somebody to come and touch their environment. So that automation definitely. But what we have seen is with the amount of phishing and ransomware attacks growing and the exposure that an organization has, there's a bit more leniency these days than 2 years back. Because just imagine a scenario where you get compromised in a ransomware and it was your IT team which was kind of blocking you to not do it. It will look really funny, right? And at the same time, you can end up on the front page of the news, which nobody wants to be for the bad reasons. So now I think we see a more alignment with IT and cybersecurity teams to take necessarily automated action. Now, they might be doing it in a more structured fashion, like there will be a separate account for automation to take action, so it can be audited and it can have restricted access to the maximum requirements. But sometimes in an exceptional situation, it can do more than what it is required to do with a break glass model or something of that sort. So it's not as challenging as it sounds. UEBA definitely is a easy and straightforward thing. We have been doing it for a lot of customers. Automation definitely has its own set of approvals and coordination needed, which we see now people are adopting to and doing.
Fair enough. And what role AI/ML is playing in that?
So machine learning, I'll start with that because as Securonix, right, like our roots are from the UEBA side of the house. So we were the first one to create a UEBA solution in the world back in 2009. So we have been 15 years doing this, and basis machine learning. So the whole idea was, which is what our founders had done, was we always have identity and access management. We always have the SIM solution in log aggregation tool. But what they were doing was they were more reactive in terms of when somebody has really got an access and something wrong has happened, that's only the time when SIM used to be able to, show it. What UEBA does, it gives you a 360-degree view of correlating the information around the human identity. So what device I use, from where I access the application and what I did, all that gets aggregated. And what essentially UEBA does, at least in our case, it uses machine learning to create a behavior profile over, let's say, a 30-day period. So I log in every morning 9 a.m. I work till 6 p.m. I do not work over the weekends. I only download, let's say, 100 to 200 MB worth of data in a day, working day. But if all of a sudden I'm working on a weekend, I'm downloading GBs worth of data in a day, which I'm not supposed to, that machine learning is able to say this is an outlier behavior, and I think this is something suspicious, so we should create a violation and get somebody to investigate. So that is the role machine learning does, to understand the behavior profile, create let's say a normal profile of a user, and anything above that normal profile thresholds will be treated as an exception and will be investigated instead of everything. So if you're an administrator who's downloading GBs worth of data because that's your job to generate reports, it's okay. You're not supposed to be suspicious about that versus a normal employee. That is the role of machine learning, and we've been implementing for the good 15 years that we've been in the market. Now, where AI comes is where it becomes more exciting recently, because generative AI has made a lot of things easy. But what we realized is it is giving more power to the bad actors. If you look at phishing emails previously, they used to be like there will be a typing error, language would be broken, grammatical errors and all. Now with ChatGPT, you can really craft a very convincing email with no typing errors, no punctuation errors or English errors, and it will look really realistic, right? So while generative AI is helping the defenders, which I'll come to, it is also making the attackers more sophisticated, right? They can write a malware script in like a matter of seconds by saying, I want this and this script to do this and this, and the script will be ready, which previously used to take days and weeks and months in some cases to exploit a vulnerability. So bad actors are leveraging generative AI and AI in general very effectively. So obviously the defenders like us also has to do even better probably. So what we are doing is we are leveraging artificial intelligence, not just to act like a chat GPT kind of bot to help you, but also embedding it at all layers, starting from noise cancelling SIM that essentially looks at your entire policies and use cases that have been defined. And if there is a specific policy which is interfering with other use cases, it can call it out that this policy is not serving much of a purpose. It is probably redundant because other two policies are doing the same work. And then AI can tell that you should take out this policy. And whenever there is a new vulnerability, it can tell you should create this new policy. We call it policy genie, where you can go and say, hey, this is the new CV I've identified. What are the data sources that are affected because of this? Tell me and help me create a policy. And it can do it in an automated fashion and in an artificial intelligence fashion, right? That brings in a lot of efficiency for the SOC analyst. Okay. Previously, you had to do it like step by step, read the CV, understand the CV, figure out where it is going to impact, and then write a policy. Now, all that can be done in seconds. That's where we believe AI plays a very significant role in efficiency and speed and accuracy overall. So, in a nutshell, that's where I see AI and ML coming into the picture.
Fair enough. And in this whole process which you are talking about, can you define SOAR for me and where SOAR comes in play?
Yeah. So, security orchestration and automated response is the response side of the house, where you have detected something, you found it suspicious, an analyst has, or an automated way, you have investigated it. Now you need to take an action. The problem is, if you have too many attacks going, you have finite analysts. There is so much action they can take in a manual way. So you need some actions to be automated as far as they're 100% sure, and you think they can be stopped in an automated way. That's where SOAR come into picture, where you can define workflows or playbooks. That is the most common term that the industry uses. Those playbooks have certain set of actions. For example, if there was an attack where credentials were misused, because maybe somebody got hold of the credential of an administrator, and this guy is now logging in from China, trying to download or navigate through the network from doing multiple pings in a short span of times, or trying to access restricted areas which generally this user doesn't access, right? So SOAR playbooks can pick up all these variables and say, okay, this user is not supposed to log in from China, definitely not at this time, and definitely not this system should be accessible. So the idea should be, in an automated way, it should go and disable that account, or highlight to the CISO and the rest of the organization, the department head or so, that this person's account seems to be compromised and they are basically trying to access the information.
And that is also basically AI in the response part only.
It is automated, yes.
Automated,
and again, AI has its role, which I will shortly come to.
Okay.
One is the automation side of the thing. So these are the steps, basis in an automated way, you'll be looking at before taking an action to disable the account and inform the relevant people. Where AI comes into play is, if let's say as part of the same set of credential breach that has happened, there are other things going on in the environment where somebody is trying to send emails using this user's email ID and all. You should be able to consolidate all this into one incident instead of having 3 to 5 different incidents, which different analysts might end up investigating. So where AI comes into picture is, how do we consolidate all this into one incident, and they are all correlated and sublinked in a way. So that's where I think AI comes into picture, which can say, okay, this account is looking compromised. There has been 5 different activities with the same user, and hence it should be one incident instead of separate 5 incidents. AI brings in the efficiency.
Amazing. Yeah. And I think this SIEM and SOAR, anyone when looks into, there are many different options in the market. And if as a customer, like for my organization, I want to do, what are the metrics I should be first looking into, and how will see the effectiveness, that which solution or which things works for me?
Yeah, I think 2 main metrics, mean time to detect and mean time to respond, because that's what this is all about, how fast you can detect and how fast you can respond. So those are the 2 main metrics. Every organization, especially the large enterprises we deal with, or MSSP partners that we deal with, they use it, right? So how much time you're taking in general to detect an attack or an indicator of compromise, and how much time you're doing to respond to that attack and basically control that attack. Outside of that, what we have seen is, especially in the banking, because of certain requirements and other regulatory pressure, they have to also look at the efficacy. How many false positives were generated? How many true negatives were generated? And then basically they have to also report back how much is the efficacy of their SIEM and SOAR and UEBA solution in place today, vis-a-vis what the regulator would expect. And lastly, the good old availability. Literally every bank that I deal with, or every big retail provider and all, first question they ask is that I want 99.999 SLAs, right? That means there should be near zero downtime, because my regulator only gives me 4 hours in a year. And if I have more than 4 hours, I'll be liable to penalties and all, right? So they're driven by availability as a key metric. How much is the availability of the SIEM, and how they can avoid essentially any downtime whatsoever during the 365 days that they operate. These are some of the key matrices that we have seen.
Okay, and from that metrics perspective, how fairly Securonix do? And maybe I will like to ask you that, okay, what bring you to the Securonix, and for anyone who is seeking out the SIEM or SOAR, what or how Securonix pay differently or something?
Yeah, what excited me about Securonix, I've been doing identity half my life, first as a practitioner and then obviously in my previous organization. So when SIEM and user entity behavior analytics is combined, it's quite powerful. We call it next-gen SIEM. And that's where I thought I can add value, because I've been doing identity access management, and SOC with just SIEM was not good enough. When you bring in the identity and the identity characteristics around that user and the behavior, it makes a huge impact. That excited me the most, that now I'm going to work in something which is the heart of any security operations, but also carrying in the identity element of the equation. So that was the reason I chose Securonix to work for the last 2 years. Now, how is Securonix different? So first of all, obviously, we provide a SaaS as an offering. That means you can get going with our offering in a matter of few days, right? Since you sign up. And we are able to do things like UEB in 30 days. But once the behavior profiling is done, 30 days, you are good to go, right? With your existing SIM. And if we are providing the SIM, UEB, and SOAR as a unified platform, which is one of our offering, we are also able to do this in the fastest time compared to if you were to do it on your on-premise, buying hardware, implementing, integrating and all, right? What is really fascinating about Securonix is the amount of integrations and the use cases it has out of the box. We have almost 1,000 integrations out of the box available and about 2,000 use cases that you can enable out of the box as soon as you implement the solution. There's a big saying in our world, at least, that we have more Microsoft use cases than Microsoft has on its own products.
Okay.
So if
Nice.
you implement their own SIM, we have far more use cases than Microsoft itself can do, which I think is a big statement to make. But we are very proud of that out of the box use cases and policies. And lastly, what we've been able to do in the last 2 years is we were also able to bring in Snowflake as our backend data lake.
Okay.
And the reason for that was we were essentially looking at very big scale deployments, right? And what you want to do is you want to hunt and research across 365 days worth of data, because whenever there is a breach that happens, generally it's not a few days or few weeks, it spans more than 6 months. Some of the attacks are very low, but they have very vast impact. So your CISO would want to have a view around 365 days worth of data. This is what Snowflake enabled us to do. So now we can provide 365-day hot data. So you can search on a click across 1 year worth of data and get result in a matter of seconds. With that, we are also able to improve the efficiency and speed of investigation, where previously you had to rehydrate the data. That would take some days, weeks, depending on where the data is, how it is backed up. So that whole cycle of investigation is now into minutes versus hours, days, and weeks in some cases, right? That big shift has made us very accessible and very attractive for most of the large enterprises that we deal with, right? So that's one of the key differentiators we are taking to the market and have been very successful.
Amazing. And after even listening out, when for any organization, when we talk about MSSP or their own SIM, why someone should choose MSSPs?
Yeah, so there are three segments that we talk about. One is the large enterprises, right, where you're talking about the likes of HDFC banks and ICICI banks of the world, right, where they will always have their own SOC. It's too big, right, and regulator would want them to have control. So they are better served by their own SOC teams. Maybe our specialized partners will provide augmented skills, but ultimately they will have to run their own SOC, and they cannot depend on a third party to run the show. But then there is a segment between mid enterprises and SMBs, because small businesses and mid-sized enterprises sometimes struggle for skill, and spend three at the same time, right? They don't have enough budget to go and have their own SOC, have their own people, and to upskill them from time to time. Whereas an MSSP has that luxury. They can have 100, 200, sometimes 500 analysts who are getting trained on different technologies. They're learning different tricks and trades of the market and the new attacks as they are surfacing. So for those SMB and mid-market segment customers, I think it makes sense to have an MSSP partner, so that they can move fast, get the best of the world from experience standpoint, skill standpoint, and at the same time they can be efficiently and compliantly adhering to all the regulatory needs, especially like things like certain in India, right? You have to adhere, you have to be ready. There, I think MSSPs make more sense.
Fair enough, and I think I learned a lot from you, Ajay, and it was great talking to you. I have asked enough questions or something, and now I would like to ask on behalf of my audience, where I want you to talk to them directly. That if someone as a MSME or a SME business or medium-sized business, they are looking forward to have an MSSP. What all criterias, what all behaviors or things they need to look into before they choose any MSSP? So my audience is all yours.
Sure. Again, very good question. For the audience, if you're looking at an MSSP and you have to decide, one is the most important thing is how much is their credibility in the market. Do they have existing customers and what scale of customers they have been dealing with? Obviously, you should, and I do recommend you should visit their SOC as a basic check that what kind of SOC they're running, how many analysts they have, what kind of skill set they carry, and as well as the offering that they are giving to you. Are they able to cover the managed detection and response, MDR as a service end to end. That includes your EDRs, your SOC operations, and associated technologies, as well as remediation part of the things, right? Like some MSSPs have investigative capabilities where they can literally be a forensic investigator for you, come up with recommendation, and then ultimately implement the solution for you. And then lastly, I think what tools they are using. Are they using a Magic Quadrant, recognized tool versus a homegrown or a small tool? Because problem with homegrown solutions is they can't scale beyond a point, and they will not have the best of the collaboration and use cases that specialized products like Securonix do, platforms like Securonix do, where they have been in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for 5 years. They've been able to build 2,000 out of the box use cases basis the experience. So what tool the MSSP uses behind the scene is also a very important question to ask. And lastly, what kind of SLA they are going to commit to you? Will they be providing 8x5 or 24x7 services? And is it cost effective for you end of the day? Because scale, skill, and spend all has to be managed at the same time, right? So these would be some of the major checks I would do before I select an MSSP.
Thank you. Awesome. And that brings to our last segment where I would like to give you the goodies back. Which
Thank
is
you so
from the
much.
TV show. Thanks for being on
Thank
the
you so
show.
much,
And
yes.
I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you next week. Till then, take care. Bye bye.
Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Sure.